Hello everyone, guys. Hello everyone. Good morning. How are you all? Good morning, everyone. My name is Afreen and I am your IEIFS and PPP educator in English medium. I hope that you are all doing well. Okay, so today is IEIFS Unit 7, Module A, and the topic name is Economic Reform. So let's start discussing this economic reform chapter. Okay, so first thing. Well, first is what is economic reform? First of all, what is this word mean? Economic reform refers to the process where a government specify a declining role for the state and expand one for the private sector in the economy. See, economic reform usually refers to deregulation or at times shrinking the size of government to remove the distortion caused by regulation or the presence of the government. See, what is economic reform? Economic reform simply means introducing such reforms and policies in the economy which actually limits the power of the government, which actually reduce the presence of the government in the economy and enhance or increase the presence of the private sector in the economy. That is known as economic reforms. Sometimes economic reforms is also considered as deregulations. Why deregulations? Because see, economic reforms is the thing. First, just a second, please. Okay. Yes. So economic reform is a thing in which the government power has been reduced and it is given in the hand of the private sector, and the role of the private sector is increasing in the economy. This is known as the economic reform. Deregulations, economic reform, or you can say in which the government actually declines their role for the economy regulation and private sectors increase their role for the economic regulation. Economic reforms in India, the very famous economic reforms in India were introduced in year 1991 as the LPG policy that you all know. LPG policy, liberalization, privatization and globalization policy. So economic reforms introduced in our economy as the LPG means liberalization, privatization and globalization, and which actually have a impact in the balance of payment on the economy, poor performance of the public sector. Means this actually was to include all the adverse effect which was happening in the balance of payment before the introduction of LPG policy, or to remove the foreign exchange reserve, what the drop of the foreign exchange reserve. So obviously to increase the foreign exchange reserve to have a inflationary pressure, to reduce the inflationary pressure of the government. So for all these purposes the economic reforms were introduced. If we talk about the economic reforms, why it has been reduced, the main purpose was the low foreign exchange reserve of India at that time. So it was considered that India was so low in the foreign exchange reserve that we have at once before 1991 there was a time in which India has to make all the gold available in with the RBI in India at that time as a collateral to World Bank, because India want to borrow the loan from the World Bank, and because of the low foreign exchange reserve we are actually not getting the loan from the World Bank, and that's why we have to make the collateral. All the gold was sent as a collateral to the World Bank. And this was the time when we are in the very low position. There was approximately nil foreign exchange reserve, and so there was lot of inflationary pressure for the government. There was lot of disturbance at that time for the government. There was lot of economic condition which was very bad, which was at the very worst situation at that time. And so in order to make all of this good, in order to make all these good, in order to make all this happening, then the economic reforms were introduced at that time in India, and that economic reform was introduced by Dr. Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao. Dr. Manmohan Singh was at the finance ministry at that time. So Dr. Manmohan Singh recommended this reform in India in 1991, and the reform name was LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization reform, and it has been implemented recommended with the help of PV Narasimha Rao, who was the then Prime Minister at that time. And they both together started this LPG policy in India, which is also known as the New Economic Reform. So let's discuss about the LPG policy in India. Before that, the transformation. See, when we talk about the transformation, what leads to the introduction of LPG policy in India? So before LPG policy, you all know the main occupation area for the people, and the main sector at that time was the agriculture sector. Okay, people were so confined to the agriculture sector. Why? Because first of all, the agriculture sector has very easy rules and regulation. There was no license required to enter in the agriculture sector, as well as there was green revolution which flourished the agriculture sector at that time. And due to this flourishment as well as low regulation, lot of people, bulky, you can say maximum people shifts to agriculture sector at that time. And there was the disbalance that was created in the economy, where the agriculture sector was boosting in a very high rate. Other two sectors were ignored. Industrial and service sectors were ignored, and there was no people, or very few people were working in the industrial and service sector. And as you all know, if we want to develop the economy, if we want development economy, actual development is when all the sectors flourish, not only the one sector, especially industrial sector. Manufacturing sector should get a boost for the development of economy. And that's why, to balance all these things, the LPG reforms were introduced in India by the recommendation of Dr. Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao. This was also known as New Economic Reform. This was the LPG policy. Okay, next. Now, what is this word mean? What is liberalization? What is the privatization? And what is the globalization? What is liberalization? What is privatization? And what is globalization? First of all, liberalization. Liberalization starts from the word liberal, and liberal means, you all know, freedom. Liberalization starts with the word liberal, and liberal, you all know, means liberalization means freedom, giving freedom. As I have already told you that there were a lot of people who were only confined to agriculture sector. The main thing which leads to this was the easy entry of the agriculture sector, and that was not present in the industrial sector. Because when at the earlier time people want to enter the industrial sector, there were lot of rules and regulations and restrictions which were imposed on that people. So they have to obtain the license. There was actually license Raj system in India, means the government official which was sitting to give you the license actually exploits you in terms of financial need. For example, they demand a hefty amount of hefty amount of money to provide you the license. So bribes was there, license Raj was there, license for getting the license. It was a very difficult time at that time, a difficult thing at that time. And that's why all the people were very reluctant to go in the industrial sector, because they think that the industrial sectors were very tough to enter. And that's why they found the easy option, as well as the flourishing environment in the agriculture sector at that time. So all the people were going there. And so the government says that first we have to liberalize this. Liberalize these means giving freedom for an entry of the people. Liberalization means removal of all type of restriction which were imposed on the central government, or by the central government, on the industrial sector, like this license and everything. So the government said that, okay, just remove all type of these restriction from the industrial sector except in few sector. Okay, so the first step was taken, that all type of license were removed at that time from maximum sectors, but there were license that were kept in some sectors which were actually very the misuse of that sector can be very high if the license were removed. So few sectors they have license. Other than that, in every sector the license raj was what removed by the government, and this is known as the liberalization. Liberalization means removal of the restrictions which were imposed by the central government on the industrial sector, entry on the industrial sector in before 1991. Okay, it removes the license raj in the economy, and by this liberalization, various people enters in the industrial sectors. It actually makes way for the people to enter in the industrial sector. Now the second step says that, okay, now we are in the need of privatization. Okay, Dr. Manmohan Singh said that, okay, we have made the entry of the people in the industrial sector by liberalization. Now we have give them places to work also now. If you are inviting people to the wedding and people are coming to a wedding, then please arrange a sitting according to that number of guests which are coming. In the same way, if we are welcoming people in the industrial sector, so we have to give them chairs also. Chairs also means we have to give them sectors or working space or working area also, so as they can work in the industrial sector. Because if we talk about before 1991 situation, our economy was more of socialist kind of economy, means many resources were in the hand of government only. Government restricted the private sector to enter that place. For example, insurance sector were in the hand of the private sector. For example, airline sector were public sector. Insurance sector, in under insurance sector, no private sectors were allowed at that time. Airline sector purely in the hand of government, no private sectors allowed. Railway, airports, these are all that sectors, arms and ammunition, defense, in which the private entry is actually not allowed. So Dr. Manmohan Singh and PV Narasimha Rao jointly decided to implement privatization. Privatization means a removal of the monopoly of the government in different sectors. Removal, when you are removing the monopoly of the government and making the private sector to enter in that sector, so that private and public they both work together, then it is known as the privatization. For example, in insurance sector, if the government is selling some of the shares to the private sector, so that the private sector will also enter the market, and the private and public they both together work in the market, then it is known as privatization. And last is globalization. Globalization means integration of various economies of the world. When you are integrating your domestic economy with the rest of the economy, then it is known as globalization. So these three reforms were introduced at that time. First was the liberalization, making the economy restriction free. Next is the privatization, selling of some government share to private sector, so as private sector will enter the market and the government and private both together work in that sector. Third, globalization, when you are what integrating your economy with the rest of the economy, then it is known as globalization. Clear? So this is liberalization, privatization and globalization. Okay, done. Next, first phase of Narasimha Committee. See, Narasimha Committee was introduced in the banking sector, and Narasimha Committee introduced various reforms in the banking sector. Narasimha Committee actually introduced various reforms in the banking sector. So there are two phases of Narasimha Committee, phase 1 and phase 2. First of all, if we talk about the phase 1, the most important reforms which took in the phase 1 was capital adequacy reform, reduction of CRR and SLR ratio, deregulations, credit facility, debt recovery tribunal, strong supervisory system, merger and amalgamation, and entry of the new private banks. So these were all the recommendations in the first phase of Narasimha Committee. Okay. Now, there was the second phase of Narasimha Committee also. The second phase, the first phase was actually in 1992. The first phase of Narasimha Committee was recommended in year 1990. Now, the second phase of the committee actually recommended in year 1998. Now, the government introduces again various other reforms or under the recommendation of the phase second of the Narasimha committee, and that reforms were, for example, prudential reforms were taken, means to match the practices and regulation which are in the Indian banking industry with the international best practices. Means whatever international banks are using, the best practices should be adopted as it is in India to enhance the banking culture. That was the prudential norms. Second, supervisory reform was introduced, means introduction of the camels. This is very important. There is the introduction of the camel. And what are camel? Camel, C is capital adequacy, A is asset quality, M is management, earning and liquidity. So this were introduced in the second phase. So both these phases are very important. It was introduced in the banking system that you all know. There was the first phase which was introduced in 1992 and second phase in year 1998. Okay. And the last thing is the insurance sector reform. See, insurance sector reform, when we talk about the insurance sector, first of all, the insurance sector was privatized in year 2000, means after so many years of the introduction of LPG policy, the final movement when the private players were allowed in the insurance sector was the in year 2000. Insurance sectors were regulated by Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority of India. Okay, so now there are various private public sectors which are working in the field of this insurance sector. See, so this is the complete overview of the chapter. Very simple, short overview. Let's start discussing the practice question. The first practice question is, which of the not is a part of supervisory camel? Camel, you all know, introduced in the second phase of the Narasimha committee. Yes or no? So which of the following is not a supervisory part of the camel? Everyone, guys, please like the video, at least like the video and share. So camel, as you all know, camel was introduced in the second phase of Narasimha committee, and this second phase in year 1992. This second phase was in year 1992. So camels, not a supervisory part of the camel, which was is the not the supervisory part of the camel. So a capital adequacy was there, asset quality was there, okay, earning was there, liquidity was there. Merger was not part of the capital adequacy, means C is the correct answer. Okay. And the last question is, Narasimha Committee on Financial Sector Reform is related to which sector? Very easy. Narasimha Committee is actually related to which sector? You can all answer this question easily. Narasimha Committee is actually related to which sector? Everyone, guys. Narasimha Committee is actually related to which sector? So Narasimha Committee is related to banking sector. As you all know, there were two phases. First phase was introduced in 1992 and the second phase was introduced in 1998. Okay. So this is the complete overview of the chapter with some of the questions. Okay. Now, if you want to download the PDF of this class, how to download the PDF of this class? You just have to download the Oliveboard app. Now, open the Oliveboard app, select the JAIIB category. This is the JAIIB category. Now, you see that there is a course section in the bottom. So you have to click this course section, and if you are clicking this in course section, then there are YouTube class PDF, this section, and here you will find every PDF of every educator. You can download it on free of cost, no cost required. Okay, so this is how to download the PDF from the Oliveboard app for the free YouTube session. You can download it freely. Okay, so now if you are preparing for your JAIIB exam, this is the courses that we have launched with the best prices for the October and November cycle. The courses are present in Hindi as well as in English. So take as per your language preference. Okay, if you want to subscribe to Oliveboard, just please take the super elite subscription. If you are taking the super elite subscription for 12 months, it means that you don't have to buy each and every batch separately. No, all the batches covered under this category will be provided to you for a period of 12 months, and there is currently 46% off that is running on the occasion of Guru Purnima. Means if you are using the code Guru to obtain the subscription, then you will be getting a 46% off. This is a subscription plan which all we educators recommend. If you don't want to buy the subscription plans, you can just buy one course. Okay, this is also the facility. If you want to buy one course, you can buy one course. The complete package course is also there. The single individual subjects are also there. So every facility is in the Oliveboard app. You can purchase it from there. Okay, so I hope that you have all enjoyed this session. If you have enjoyed this session, please like and share the video, and if you haven't subscribed the channel, please subscribe the channel and press the bell notification icon. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye, guys. Take care, everyone. Bye.